You do these.
All right. Good morning. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This morning, we are talking about how parents can continue to support their kiddos' social and emotional development while managing school from home and probably a job and every other task you need to be taken care of. So lots of things to be done. And I'm so happy to have Stacey Montgomery today with us.
Good morning.
Thank you very much. Stacey is the owner founder of Stacey Design, and Stacey is a mom, which is great. I'm a mom, you're a mom. I love having conversations with other moms who are trying to figure out some of these pieces that we're all struggling with right now. You're a speaker, author, illustrator, and you're on a mission to help kids be comfortable in their own skins and to view others as unique, yet integral parts of the community. You created a social emotional learning curriculum for elementary schools, which is phenomenal, which is designed to help kids embrace their own differences and encourage them to accept differences in others. Good morning, Stacey. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Well, definitely our pleasure. Do you mind if I just read a little something out of the inside of one of your books? Stacey has a series of books. This one is What Are Your Big Dreams? I love these. And these are really geared toward kids that are, about 8 to 12, and they're lovely. They're beautifully designed. Their illustrations. You're the illustrator also.
Yes, I am.
Are fabulous. So I just love it. But I'm just going to take a part of this. It says, we believe that when a child taps into that inner greatness, a world of possibilities opens up. The child performs better in the classroom, feels more at ease in social situations, and is empowered to pursue his or her dreams. The child is full of gratitude, is compassionate, and has a serving heart. I love that. I mean, right? Those are all the things we want. We believe that the child who understands his or her inner greatness is a more confident child and blossoms into a more confident adult. I love that. That's lovely.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, Stacey, can you tell us a little bit about your curriculum, about what you do, about Stacey Design, about the ways you're trying to help families work through all of these challenges?
Sure. Well, I started with the books, the guided journals. You have one of them there a few years ago. And my goal was to help kids really focus on themselves, on what makes them unique and special. I wanted to provide a space for them to really reflect on that, to think about their goals, about the good things in their lives and their challenges. And so that's where the books began. And I call them the superhero series. And I use superhero imagery because at the end of the day, I want kids to find their superpowers and view themselves as the heroes of their own lives. So it kind of started with those books. And so about a year ago, I wanted to take it to, I guess, another level. And I wanted to, I wanted the impact to be more lasting, and I wanted to reach more kids. So approaching schools and developing an SEL program, SocialEmotional Learning program, seemed like a natural step, and a lot of people encouraged me to do so. So the program I developed, it's called Why is Different Awesome? And it's based on one of my books, which is called Why is Different Awesome? And it captures a lot of things. The main thing it captures is that I want kids to love who they are. Whatever it is about them that makes them different, that makes them special, just embrace that because it's you. And number two, I want them to respect differences in others. And when those two things come together, respecting yourself, respecting others, the community as a whole benefits. So the overall goal is to build an inclusive community.
Oh, I love it.
That's what it's all about.
What a fantastic mission. Just absolutely fantastic. So
thank you.
That's your general mission. And of course, now it's even more challenging to have inclusivity while people are doing distance learning. I mean, talk about a challenge for
Yes.
educators, for parents, for kids. So as parents are trying to manage this, what are some of the things that you would recommend for them as to try to keep some of that social emotional learning going as
Mhm.
they're doing this at home learning?
Well, the first thing I would recommend is to just be mindful of it. We are really focused on. There's a lot of talk about learning loss. So there's a focus on the basics: reading, writing, arithmetic. The 3 R's, as they used to be called, science, and all of that. There's a huge focus on that because we don't want we want kids to be where they should be academically, but I encourage parents and teachers not to lose sight of social emotional learning. That needs to continue to be taught and stressed throughout remote learning. So when it comes to Zoom or whatever platforms that schools are using, what however they would teach and and emphasize inclusivity, respecting the others, they need to continue to do that. It can't be something which okay, we don't have time for that right now, there's too much going on. That can't be the attitude. So
Right.
continue to teach kids and emphasize respecting differences when you're watching television, watching videos, reading books. Continue to focus on the words and the illustrations and make sure you're using materials that are not full of bias. Continue these conversations, reflect on it. And one thing that my program does is just that. We talk about all of these topics, and it's not only a academic exercise. We need to apply it to our everyday lives and continuous conversations. So
Right. So for educators, you're saying, boy, if you can find materials that really help continue this conversation and make kids continue to be curious about it,
mhm.
that would be a recommendation. And is that part of your curriculum, Stacey? Do you have that in your curriculum?
That is not specifically part of my curriculum, no. But I did give a webinar this summer in August, and it was about creating an anti-racist environment in your school. But it really applies, has general application, not just for racism, but to just generally have providing a bias-free education, a bias-free environment. And first and foremost, educators have to be mindful of this. They have to understand the topics. They have to understand how to identify, bias in materials. So as they teach, however it's being done, whether remotely, whether in the buildings, however it's being taught, they need to make sure what they are teaching and the materials they are using and the words they use are free of bias. And that is intention. It really does, because materials, it creeps into materials, in what might be very unsuspecting ways. So you have to be mindful of it. And I think that's part of the problem, is that many teachers are not mindful of it. So it's nothing purposeful, but there has to be a purposeful, intention to rid bias from
Well,
materials.
yeah, right, for sure. We see a lot of LGBT youth in our practice, and a lot of trans youth whose pronouns, for example, might
Mhm.
be, a gender neutral pronoun. It might be they, so there is a lot for people to be mindful of, but the impact of that on students. I mean, my kids are mixed race, and the impact when somebody recognizes that they have two parts of themselves, at least,
Yes.
it's huge. They feel seen. It helps them relax. They feel much more welcome at school. We had to actually move so that we were in a district where that would occur. Not everybody has that luxury, but I know from my own kids just how important that is. So do you use this some in your own home too?
Yes, and stepping back for a second to what you just said, how you want your kids to feel welcome, and it was a problem, and that is the very problem that caused me to write that book and to create that SEL program.
Mm-hmm.
Kids who don't feel welcome in their schools.
Right.
That was and so and it was based on a lot of it was based on my son's experience. My son is now a young adult. He's 20, but he went through Naperville schools, and a lot of it was a very bad experience because he didn't feel welcome. He was bullied, and frankly, I don't the staff didn't have the tools to really address it and help him. Right. And so it was really a difficult experience. Mm-hmm. But getting back to your question about teaching these things in my home, yes, I'm constantly doing that. And the interesting thing is the reason that I feel I have to constantly do it, and that we all need to constantly do it, is because there's so many unfortunate, negative, incorrect, damaging messages coming from outside of the home, and you have to kind of counteract that. You have to, kind of like teach your kids to be kind of like defensive, because they know this is going to come. So you have to get them prepared by building them up, all of the time, empowering them so that they, aren't, so that their emotional wellness is not damaged by what they're hearing from others outside, from the media.
Exactly. Boy, and that's tough. I mean, obviously, I obviously grew up a white person. And so now having these mixed race kids, it's been, talk about trial by fire. Things that I never thought I would have to address, it just didn't occur to me. And I can sort of feel that sense of people think they're doing a good job, and they're being kind, and they're being inclusive, and they don't see themselves as being biased in any way. And, as we know, it's so unconscious, it's so embedded in people. And, this summer, as all of these social justice issues were just blowing up, and I'm watching my kids be really afraid. Afraid. And I remember, when my kids were really young, someone I thought who was very wise said, your task is going to be to teach your children to be empowered, not to be afraid. You need to teach your children to have skills, not to have a chip on their shoulder. And I thought, okay, that makes sense, right? So we have to teach them these really important pieces of how being different, being who they are, is amazing, when the world is telling them very much the opposite. So this is your work, right?
This is my work, to empower kids and to respect differences. And one of the reasons that people do have races or racist attitudes or a prejudice is, one, fear, and two, because they simply have not been exposed to much else. So, if you are, raised in an environment that's essentially all one race, and you start meeting people of other races, you just don't know. And I mean, that doesn't mean that, there's a special way you have to treat people of other races, but you just are not used to it. So you make assumptions, and you may ask or say things which are disrespectful or insulting, but not necessarily intentional. And that's one of the reasons my program and other programs, need to be taught. That's why my books have pictures of kids with all different skin tones. Some have glasses, some have different abilities, wheelchairs, all differences. Because when you learn about others, you become more comfortable. The level of anxiety and fear goes down. The prejudging stops. In the book, there's a part about families, and I'm sorry, there's a part about called Focus on the Facts. I did an interview with a girl who has a sister with Down syndrome, and she talked about how, how other kids made assumptions like it's contagious and things like that.
Yeah.
And so there's a journaling page that says focus on the facts. We need to learn. We need to learn about other people, about other cultures. And I encourage people, adults as well as children, to share your experiences, share your culture, with others, and that's the way we learn. That's the way our communities become stronger.
Yeah, for sure. We ended up picking a school district. We were just very fortunate that we could make a move, and we could pick a school district where in the grade school there were 34 languages spoken.
Oh, wow.
And in the junior high, there's 50 some languages, and then it's up from that in the high school. So we were very intentional about not just wanting our kids to see racial difference or see people like them who were racially mixed, but we also wanted them to see people from everywhere. So I'm telling you, I feel like I can take my kids now anywhere, and we were just very fortunate. I think people can teach their kids about these issues without move their whole family, but if we needed to, it just worked for us. But we can teach people, we can teach kids. And, this summer it was all about race in particular. But it's like your books, you're talking about disabilities, you're talking about extra abilities or different abilities. So it's skin tone, it's glasses, not glasses. It's the way the world is going to see us and make assumptions because we don't look like them. So I love that. It's not just one issue, but clearly over the summer, as all of the social justice pieces were really bubbling up, did you find that people were seeking out your materials? Like, are people open to this?
Yes.
That's so exciting to me.
I had people, direct message me and call me and say, they were very timid. They were almost afraid to ask, and they didn't want to offend me, but they wanted to know, I don't know what to do. Do you have any resources? I want my kids to, I don't want my kids to be racist, and things like that. Right. And one of the common things that these are, white parents who would say to me is like, I teach my kids not to see race. I'm like, no, race is there. See it. And that's so it led to so many wonderful conversations. And that I think is how things should be all the time. If there is somebody who, whether it's race, ethnicity, they come from, a different country, a different religion, ask questions. And people should be receptive to answering those questions and not to be offended because we're asking the question. Exactly. So that was, I guess, one good thing, that came out of this summer is people were just thinking about it. And my Facebook group was full of questions and posts about this.
Oh, I'm excited to hear that. That's great, right? Because, and people do need to have a place, and I hope people can be unafraid to ask a question. I had some parents who had talked to me about this, and they said, well, I know your kids are mixed race, but so you're not an expert, and I don't want to offend you, and can I ask you a couple questions? I'm like, of course. And they said, well, we've heard that we're not supposed to ask the people who are involved the questions. It's not your job or your children's job or your, the family's job or the person of difference's job to explain. I'm like, well, who else is going to tell you about it? Right. So I get it. You need to do the work as the majority race or dominant race. I get that. And simultaneously, I'm always thrilled when people want to ask questions. If they want to ask about LGBTQ issues, I'm thrilled, when people want to ask these questions. I think these are great questions. Who else is going to answer them?
Absolutely. But one thing I do caution educators And, as I talk about anti-racist or anti-bias education, one thing I do caution educators is not to put the burden on, the fourth grader, the one, Black or the one Asian or whatever it might be in the class when it comes to
representation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Many years ago when I was in school, I forget how old I was, but the book, the movie, either the book or the movie Roots had come out, and so it somehow came up in class, and so the teacher immediately turned to me, like and because I was the only Black student in the class, and I was supposed to say something. And, so that is what, in the classroom, the teachers need to teach and the students need to learn. The Black students, are not there to teach the other students about, the experience of Black people in American history. That's not their job. If they want to chime in, that's fine. But it's not their job. But I also do agree with you. Don't be afraid to ask questions of people if you want to learn. I think that is in many ways better than Googling something.
Better than Googling. And what is it like for you, not as the representation of your entire race or an entire culture or entire social group, and having the appropriate places? Because I'm with you. I would be furious if somebody asked my kids, so what is it like to be mixed race in the middle of class? I mean, how horrible.
Exactly.
But to have places like Stacey M Design where they can go and they can ask these questions and get good answers. And so I think your point is a really good one, Stacey. What are the appropriate places for people to go? It's great questions. Ask the questions of the right people at the right time. And the children in the classroom, I'm so glad you said that, are not the people to ask.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's great.
But it's the right place, right time. So teacher asking the student, bad.
Right. Asking student, bad, don't do that. Yeah.
But peer asking peer, adult asking adult, I think that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, that's wonderful. So, you have a book that is about, it's, essentially raising anti-racist kids. I mean, I think is kind of the topic. So what do you tell parents? Like, what are some things in addition to don't be colorblind? What are the 3 things that parents can be mindful of that they can bring to kids? And how do they incorporate that, or maybe even give some suggestions to the schools about ways that they can bring some of these topics in?
Right. For schools, my number one advice is that the teachers need to be educated. So after the events of the summer, it seemed that every school district hired, somebody who was in charge of equity. I mean, that has been the thing. And so as part of that person's job, or even the principal, is have available, make available, and encourage your teachers to, to attend workshops, seminars, or whatever, what have you, about this. And I know a lot of districts did have, a series of webinars and things like that. And so your teachers need to be educated. I had a principal say to me, when talking about anti-racist education, that he said, frankly, I don't want some of my teachers to talk about, race in class, because I'm afraid of what they're going to say.
Oh, okay. So he kind of had a sense that they didn't know enough. So
exactly. Yeah. So, give your teachers, your staff, your principals, everybody the opportunity to learn. And it can't simply be, okay, we're going to have, this 1 hour webinar and that's it. It needs to kind of be a continual discussion. And number 2, there needs to be a review of materials that have been adopted for the class. You know, there are some materials which are obviously, have bias, obvious. But, teachers need to look with a critical eye. And I read somewhere online, I can't remember where it was, but this great idea of, get the students involved. So, for example, if there are books in the classroom, like a lot of elementary schools in particular, they have their own, set of books in their classroom, in addition to the LMC. Take some time, have every child maybe grab a book and give them some marching orders. We're going to look for A, B, and C. And so you're teaching kids how to look for bias in books. And you are going through your library and maybe making decisions about either we need to get rid of books or we need to add more books or something. But, I think that was a wonderful idea.
Absolutely.
And at the same time, you're teaching reading, and you're teaching kids how to research. You're doing a lot of things, but the goal, one of the goals, is to rid the classroom of bias, materials with bias. And as far as parents, again, have materials in your home, whether it's toys or books, whatever, videos, movies, that are that have representation and that are accurate. So just examine your library, and as you buy books, just look at them with that critical eye. Right. And don't be afraid to learn with your kids or to initiate these conversations. Encourage your kids to ask about other races, other ethnicities, religions, LGBT. Ask them. Encourage these conversations. And it doesn't have to be, like overly serious and, we're going to have this lecture today. It can come up naturally, with something, when a commercial comes on television, when something is on television, chat about it,
Right. So I love this idea of going through your books, because that's something parents can do now with kids at home. Because, I hope we get back to the LMCs in the classrooms.
Everybody's at home.
Yeah, my teenagers are like, have a football game, please, or So nothing to be done. But so at home, I love that idea of going through the books, especially with younger kids. My kids, thank goodness, like they're both reading The Hate U Give, which is an amazing book. I think there are things in there that we are able to then talk about. And their schools are independently doing this. But I love the idea of a parent being able to go through books at home. If you could list just 2 things that parents might be looking for with their kids in those books that would flag a good one, this is not a good one, especially what's not a good one. I think that it's a good one is probably a little more obvious, but what would you suggest?
Right. Well, they would look for books that where they may have let's say an African-American character kind of in the background who is just there because they simply felt they need to have one. So you want books that that don't always have the Black character as the bad person. You don't want books that always have the Black character just kind of in the background as part of the chorus, so to speak. You want books that have protagonists that are of a variety of races. And I understand not every book can do everything, but your library itself, should kind of have diversity in it. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing. And so yeah, that's one thing I will look in books. And another thing I will look for is accuracy. When books, whether they're fiction or nonfiction, talk about history, make sure it's accurate. It was not too long ago, I believe it was like, within the last 5 years, one of the major book publishers had a book that described slavery, that described slaves as immigrants. So, I mean, this was recent, like in the last 5, 10, 20 years at the most. And again, this isn't going to, this was a textbook, but as far as books that are used at home, make sure they are historically accurate. And one thing that I know is that people are afraid to really talk about history, about our unfortunate history of this country. And some people believe if you really talk a lot about what this country's history with slavery and then post-slavery, it makes it sound like a horrible country and it's not patriotic. But bottom line, it's accurate. Just be accurate. That doesn't mean you're not patriotic. Doesn't mean you don't love this country. I love this country, but the reality of it is, like every country, this country is not perfect, and its history has a lot of unfortunate things.
Yeah,
and unfortunate is a kind word, but
cruel, and tragic. A lot of cruel and tragic things.
Yes.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I think that's great. So one of the things from the time my kids were little, it's funny that I'm wearing black and white today. We would have conversations because, in their cartoons, a character, the good guy wore white and the bad guy wore black. And, the characters were, I don't know, probably white characters, but it was just an opportunity to talk about, how come the bad guy always wears black? Why do they make black the bad guy? So subtle ways that kids this stuff sort of creeps in. And so my kids now, they'll say, Mom, your scarf is a little racist. But it's something that clearly we have had enough conversation. Right. We can kind of incorporate it in that way, which I think is really, it's nice for all of us. So, Stacey, we just have a couple of minutes left. Is there anything in particular that you would like to leave parents with or educators with? Just a final nugget.
Well, one final nugget, kind of focusing on the emotional wellness during remote learning, educating at home. What I want to say about that is one, I think we need to be hyper focused on it. We really need to be hyper focused on it, and that we need to really help our kids care for themselves, advocate for themselves, and and pay attention when it looks as if our kids are just being, are suffering from anxiety, or just really when it looks as if our kids are really being negatively impacted by, remote learning and other things that are going on right now. Just be hypersensitive and talk to your kids. And then if they need help, give them the professional help that they need.
Yeah, exactly. Well, right. I mean, again, this is all about, I think the theme of what we're talking about is how do we give kids the resources they need? So the social emotional learning is just as important as the academic learning. And for parents and I'll tell you, I know parents are very concerned about their academic learning. And one of the things that I'm talking to parents about frequently, so I really appreciate you bringing that up, Stacey, is that, well, how are they doing? Do they seem okay? Do they seem anxious? Do they seem depressed? Do they seem to be having more stress-related symptoms? Are their stomachs hurting? What are the things that you're seeing? And how can we help them not worry about those things quite as much right now? So I'm talking to parents a lot about that, emotional pieces. So obviously your website, your Facebook group, these are places parents can go to get resources for the social emotional pieces during the pandemic, also for just being able to honor their differences throughout the course of their lives. So it's wonderful, wonderful work. Again, Stacey Montgomery of Stacey M Design, thank you so much for being with us here today. Thank you for having a conversation. This is really wonderful. I hope you have super happy holidays, and we'll look forward to keeping in touch.
Oh, definitely. Thank you.
Please keep in mind that Stacey's available for everyone as a resource. She can be reached at Stacey M Design. I'm Dr. Margot Jacquot from the Juniper Center. If you need help for your kids or for yourselves as you're struggling through the pandemic with some of the emotional pieces that people are dealing with right now, we'd be happy to answer questions for you as well. If you're a mental health practitioner, I also have a new podcast that I'm having a lot of fun doing. Mental Health Business Mentor, when I had short hair. So please listen to that. We have a couple episodes a month that's really geared toward mental health professionals who are trying to develop more business agility in addition to being lovely people for their clients. So thank you all again. I really appreciate you, Stacey. Thank you everyone for watching, and we will see you next time. Be well.